anxiety today, when confronting other people? Then total it up, and if the balance is on the debit side, make a resolution to change it. Every good shopkeeper makes a balance sheet at the end of the day, and if his merchandise doesn't have good customer acceptance, obviously he will change it. It's a skill. It's not an inbred character fault or ability. It's a skill to change oneself again and again until all impurities have been cleansed. It's not because other people are so lovable. They're not. If they were, they'd be roaming around in the God realms. They wouldn't be down here. This is the fifth realm from the bottom in a cosmology of 31 realms. If we are in class 5 from the bottom and 31 exist altogether, well, what can you expect?
There is a lot to learn in this realm, and that is its purpose. It is a continual adult education class. That is what this whole human realm is designed for. Not for the purpose of finding some comfort, not in order to have riches, wealth, possessions. Not to become famous or to change the world. People have many ideas. Life is strictly an adult education class, and this is the most important lesson, namely to cultivate and make the heart grow. There is no lesson more important. Just as in a garden, when weeds surround a beautiful rose bush. First of all, its nourishment is taken away, it can't flourish, and then nobody can enjoy the flowers or their fragrance. Eventually the weeds will smother the roses. The same happens within our heart. The rose bush is our lovingness that is growing there. If we don't cut down the weeds and make sure that the flowers can be seen and the fragrance experienced, if we don't get these weeds down to manageable size, but let them grow and grow, they will eventually smother loving kindness altogether. The weeds are anger and all its associated emotions.
Most people are looking for someone to love them. Some people find a few people to love them and then maybe love back. But some people are unfortunate and cannot find anyone. They become bitter and resentful. Yet really it works exactly the other way around. If we ourselves are loving, then we find innumerable loving people around, because everybody wants to be loved. That someone loves us doesn't mean that we are loving. The other person is feeling the love. We don't feel a thing. All we feel is gratification that somebody has found us lovable. That is another ego support, to make the ego bigger. But loving others goes in the direction of making the ego smaller. The more love we can extend, the more people we can include in that love, and the more love we have. Whatever we can generate, that much we have within us. It is a very simple equation, but few people see it that way. Everybody is looking for more people to love them. It doesn't work. It's absurd, but we have so many absurdities in our lives.
This is in line with another one of our 11 benefits spoken of by the Buddha. One is beloved by humans and by non-humans. If we extend love toward others, they'll feel attracted to us. There will be no scarcity of people to love us. We give them love not because we want to give something, not because they need it, not because they are worthy of it, but because the heart has been trained to do nothing else. It is just like being trained in arithmetic. If a set of figures is put in front of you, you will be able to add them up. What else should you do with them if you want to know their total? Your mind has been trained in that way. If the heart has been trained, it extends love no matter what happens.
The Devas protect one. Devas are beings of higher realms, guardian angels. A person who extends love to others is protected. Often people will object, if people are nasty to you, and you respond with lovingness, won't they think you're weak and take advantage of you? If they do, which is quite possible because people are inclined that way, that's their bad karma, isn't it? But the person with the lovingness will never lose. How can you lose the love you carry around in your own heart? If somebody takes advantage of you, it is another instance of learning whether your heart has already been trained, whether you have any resentment, or whether you can actually love that person and respond with kindness. It is another instance when we can check whether we're doing the necessary work. Of course, love includes consideration of other people's rights. A person who takes advantage lacks love. The weakness that one may be afraid of showing is a fallacy, because love gives strength, not weakness. A person who has nothing but loving feelings feels safe and secure, totally at ease, because nothing can sway them. Love strengthens, not weakens. But if it is coupled with passion, as it is often misunderstood to be, then it weakens one because it has created dependency. If it's a feeling and a cultivation of one's own heart, then it is as strong as a rock. The protection that one gets is a protection through one's own purity.
One's mind is quickly concentrated is another one of the 11 benefits of loving kindness. That's the reason for starting every meditation session with loving thoughts for yourself. The mind cannot concentrate without the 3 foundations of generosity, moral conduct, and loving kindness. These are the 3 pillars of meditation, which support meditation practice. Loving kindness, as a feeling in one's heart, is an absolute essential for concentration because it creates peace and calmness in the mind. If that's lacking, more loving kindness meditation at the beginning of each session may be helpful in order to cultivate lovingness within yourself.
Loving others cannot happen if one doesn't love oneself. But loving oneself does not mean indulging oneself. Always wanting it nice and comfortable, not a single mosquito around, or always the kind of food one is used to. That is indulgence, not love. That's being silly. The love a mother has for her child is permeated with wisdom. If the mother indulges the child is going to pay for it dearly, and so is the mother. But if the mother loves truly, she won't spoil her child. She will bring her child up with love and wisdom and, because of her love, demand adherence to certain standards of behavior. This is what we have to do with ourselves. We have to demand compliance with certain rules of conduct from ourselves because we love ourselves. Coming to a meditation course and sitting through it is loving oneself.
The concentration that everybody would like to reach in meditation is truly dependent upon lovingness in the heart. It is also dependent upon practice. But if practice is lacking, loving kindness can take its place in making concentration happen. One has a shiny complexion. This means one has a pleasant expression on one's face. It's a far better beauty aid than anything one can buy at the chemist's. That's where real beauty comes from, and if one wants to be reborn beautiful, this is the ingredient. A young person may look beautiful without having much inside. But one can often see the real beauty of a person by observing them. The Buddha was often described as making such an impression on people, just by walking along the street, that they followed him and became his disciples after only seeing him once. In one instance, Rahula, his son, became proud about looking beautiful like his father. The Buddha immediately reproved him and said, "All form should be regarded thus, this is not mine, this I am not, this is substanceless."
Another of the 11 benefits is that fire, poison, and arrows won't hurt one. People don't shoot arrows much these days, but they do use guns or clubs. Fire and poison are still used for aggression. This doesn't necessarily mean that one is invincible, but it does mean that persons with a great deal of lovingness don't usually find themselves in situations such as that. But if they do, their heart is not affected. Their possessions, maybe, but not their heart. One is invincible in the heart because one is no longer able to hate. One dies an unconfused death. We are all going to die. The moment of death is important, because it is the moment of rebirth. It's actually our birthday. Everybody talks about death as something sad and filled with grief. If death is experienced consciously, with awareness and full loving kindness, then it is a good birthday. That's all it really is, unless one is an arahant. Our habitual way of thinking and feeling will be with us at the end of life, at the moment of death. The habitual thinking pattern cannot be changed suddenly. If it has been one of loving kindness, there will be awareness, no fear, peace and security in the heart. The instant of death needs to be a profitable moment because it's the start of a whole new lifetime again.
Loving kindness can be cultivated in the heart with great benefit to ourselves. Someone once said, quite rightly, that's an ego trip. It is. As long as we have an ego, every trip we're on is an ego trip. But at least this is one trip in the right direction. This journey goes toward the ultimate destination, egolessness, because the more loving kindness there is in the heart, the less ego. The more the ego diminishes, the more love can come from the heart. When other people are taken into the heart, the self has to step aside to make room. Others are benefiting by that as a matter of course, but that is a secondary consideration. The only person we can lead to liberation is ourself. Everybody has to go alone, solitarily. Anybody who would like to come along is welcome. The bandwagon is big, and there aren't enough people on it yet.
Compassion. Our second friend is compassion. Its far enemy is cruelty. Its near enemy is pity. Pity is called a near enemy because it seems so similar. It is very close and yet it is an enemy. Pity arises when we are sorry for someone. Compassion is when we are sorry with someone. Calm means with passion is strong feeling. Compassion is empathy, to feel with another person. Compassion arises when one realizes the suffering, the unsatisfactoriness that exists within oneself. Only then can one feel with another person. Otherwise one is still under the delusion that everything is all right with oneself, that it's only other people who are having a bad time. If one sees clearly within oneself all the unsatisfactory states that arise constantly in quick succession, the likes and dislikes, the regrets and the resentments, the fears and the worries, the tensions, then one knows that everyone is subject to the same. Then when someone else is having a difficult time, one can feel with that person, because one knows about one's own problems.
Compassion can be an excellent starting point for love. If one can arouse in oneself a genuine feeling for another person, realizing how difficult the situation must be for them, what may be happening, then from there it's not such a far cry to having a feeling of lovingness toward that person. But again, we mustn't discriminate between people, and that is what mostly happens. We can usually feel some compassion for those with whom we have some affinity. They belong to the same group, or to the same religion, the same country, the same neighborhood, or the same club, whatever it is that we are interested in. Something that we can call mine, which makes it selective. That selection is what separates us from each other, and wherever one goes in the world this separation exists. This creates all the strife between people.
The separation from each other is based on our ego concept. This is me, and I've got to protect me and defend me. Me feels threatened. Me feels threatened so often that one doesn't even know me very well. One doesn't know who that me really is. All one is aware of is the threat to me with its attendant fear. When there is fear, there is no compassion because fear is based on hate. We only fear what we don't like. We don't fear what we love. The more fear there is in the heart, the less compassion. Fear is always based on the ego concept. An arahant is totally fearless. There is no fear in a person who's enlightened. There is nothing to fear because there's nothing to gain and nothing to lose. It has all become immaterial, without significance. The more ego, the more fear. Fear of the dark, fear of thieves, fear of bad weather, fear of the future, all kinds of fear. Fear is always based on the protection of that illusory me. And the more we want to protect me, the less we can have compassion.
Compassion can, of course, be lip service. We can pretend. Most of us are extremely good at pretending. Once Pesa, an elephant trainer's son, came to see the Buddha and said to him, "I have no problems with elephants. They do exactly as they appear to want to do. They have an intention and I can see that intention and then they follow through with it. But I have a lot of problems with people. They say one thing and do another." The Buddha said, "That's right. The elephant lives in the jungle, but the human being lives in a mental jungle. People say one thing and mean or do another. The worst of it is that we're not even aware of it. We think that is the way it ought to be done. We think that this is convention, custom, or tradition, and we don't thoroughly examine our thoughts, speech, or actions."
Only when we examine ourselves with ruthless honesty will we ever know what the Buddha taught. The Buddha talked in depth about what happens with each one of us. Superficially, we all look different and seem to have different ideas and intentions. Superficially, there seems to be a great difference between people, but underlying it all there is a unity. We all are made from the same recipe, and we are all searching for the same thing and going to the same destination. The differences we find are arbitrary. They are all based on the ego concept.
Every thinking person bemoans the fact that there is no peace between nations. Everybody would like to see peace on this globe. Obviously, there isn't any. In this century, there has been a war somewhere practically all the time. Every country has an enormous defense system that uses a lot of energy, money, and manpower. This defense system is turned into an attack system the minute anyone makes even the slightest unfriendly remark or seems to be moving toward an invasion of airspace or of territorial waters. This is rationalized and justified with, we have to defend the border of our country in order to protect the inhabitants. Disarmament is a hope and a prayer.